Imagine a city that never touches land. A city where 50,000 people live permanently at sea. A city with schools, hospitals, parks, shopping malls, and an airport. A city 4 times longer than the largest aircraft carrier ever built, and it would never stop moving. Instead, this city would circle the planet continuously, visiting every continent, every ocean, every major port. No country, no fixed address, no borders, just one enormous floating civilization. At the turn of the 21st century, a group of engineers and investors proposed building exactly that. They called it Freedom Ship. The price tag? $11 billion. The promise? A completely new way for humanity to live. And yet, despite global attention,
the structural
massive
integrity
ambition,
specified
and
here
years of
needs review.
planning, the
I'll
Freedom Ship
cross-reference
was
the
never
3D
built.
model for stress
So what
points on
happened
that
to
deck.
the largest ship ever conceived?
Concept images of the Freedom Ship have been released, with an estimated cost of $1 billion.
To understand the Freedom Ship, you have to understand a much bigger trend. For decades, humanity has been quietly running out of space. Cities are expanding faster than ever. Megacities like Tokyo, Shanghai, Mumbai, and New York are packed with tens of millions of people. Housing costs are skyrocketing, infrastructure is strained, and climate change is threatening coastal cities worldwide. By 2050, nearly 70% of the global population will live in cities. The question is becoming unavoidable. Where will everyone live? Some people believe the answer is upward, building taller skyscrapers. Others believe it's underground, creating entire subterranean cities. And then there are those who believe the answer lies in the oceans. After all, over 70% of Earth's surface is water. Imagine if cities could simply float across the seas, free from land shortages, borders, and overcrowding. This idea has inspired architects, futurists, and engineers for decades. But no proposal was ever as bold or as ambitious as Freedom Ship.
The harbor placements look secure on the southern quadrant.
Agreed. Let's finalize the schematic.
The Freedom Ship concept emerged in the late 1990s. The project was spearheaded by Norman Nixon, an American engineer and entrepreneur who believed the oceans could host the next generation of human settlements. But this wasn't just another cruise ship. It was meant to be a permanent floating city. The design was staggering. The ship would measure 1,370 meters long, nearly 1 mile, about 230 feet wide, and 25 decks tall. To put that in perspective, the largest cruise ships today are around 360 meters long. Freedom Ship would be almost 4 times larger. At full capacity, the floating city would host 50,000 permanent residents, 30,000 daily visitors, 20,000 crew members. That means up to 100,000 people on board at any given time. Essentially, a medium-sized city at sea. Inside the ship would be luxury apartments, hotels, schools, universities, hospitals, shopping malls, parks, art galleries, restaurants, nightclubs, offices, factories, and perhaps the most unbelievable feature of all, an airport. The top deck would include a runway capable of handling small commercial aircraft. Residents could literally fly in and out of their floating city. Meanwhile, the ship itself would never dock permanently. Instead, it would travel the world continuously. A 2-year journey might include North America, South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, stopping briefly outside major coastal cities. Passengers could visit the mainland, then return home to their moving ocean metropolis. It sounded like something out of science fiction, but engineers insisted it was technically possible. Building Freedom Ship would require engineering on a scale never attempted before. Ships today are designed primarily for transportation. Freedom Ship would need to function as an entire city. The first challenge was size. At one point, 3 kilometers long, the structure would weigh millions of tons. Designers proposed using a massive steel grid structure, similar to offshore oil platforms. The ship would be extraordinarily wide and stable, minimizing motion from waves. In fact, engineers claimed residents might barely notice they were at sea. But propulsion presented another challenge. Traditional ships use powerful engines designed for speed. Freedom Ship was different. It would move slowly and constantly, cruising at around 10 knots. The ship would be powered by multiple diesel-electric engines, possibly combined with gas turbines. The design also included advanced stabilizers to counteract storms and rough seas. Then there were the utilities. A city needs power, water, and waste management. Freedom Ship would include desalination plants for drinking water, power stations generating electricity for tens of thousands of residents, waste treatment systems similar to those used in large cities. Food supply was another issue. Some produce could be grown on board using hydroponic farming, but most supplies would arrive via support ships and port stops. In many ways, Freedom Ship would function like a mobile island nation. But building it would push the limits of marine engineering. If Freedom Ship had been built, it would have raised fascinating political questions. Where exactly would it belong? Ships normally operate under a national flag, subject to that country's laws. But Freedom Ship was designed to host tens of thousands of international residents. Some envisioned it operating with a kind of semi-independent legal status, similar to international waters platforms. Others imagined it becoming a floating economic zone.
Then let's start
Companies
the evening.
could operate
Cheers.
with reduced taxes. Entrepreneurs could start businesses free from many regulations. Supporters believed Freedom Ship could become a global hub for innovation and commerce. Critics saw something very different. They feared it might become a playground for the ultra-wealthy, avoiding regulations and taxes. There were also economic questions. The estimated cost was $11 billion, and that was in early 2000s dollars. Adjusted for inflation today, that could easily exceed $18 to $20 billion. Funding would depend heavily on selling residential units on board. Luxury apartments were projected to cost millions of dollars each. The project was essentially betting that thousands of wealthy buyers would choose to live permanently at sea. A radical lifestyle change. As excitement grew around the Freedom Ship concept, so did skepticism. One major concern was engineering feasibility. Many naval architects questioned whether a vessel of that size could be built safely. A structure nearly 1 mile long would face enormous stresses from waves and ocean movement. Even slight flexing across such a long hull could cause structural problems. Then there were weather risks. The oceans are unpredictable. Hurricanes, typhoons, massive storms. Could a
Look at
floating
these
city
levels.
truly
They're rising
withstand
faster than
decades
we
of
predicted.
extreme conditions?
We need to analyze the
Environmental
samples
groups
immediately.
also raised alarms. A project of this scale would generate massive fuel consumption, marine pollution, potential disruption to ocean ecosystems. There were also concerns about waste management and environmental impact on ports worldwide. Financial risks proved just as serious. Despite widespread media attention, investors remained cautious. The early 2000s saw major economic uncertainty, including the dot-com crash. Raising billions for an unproven concept proved incredibly difficult. And without funding, the project stalled. If Freedom Ship had been built successfully, it could have changed the way humanity thinks about cities. Imagine dozens of floating cities roaming the oceans, each one hosting tens of thousands of residents. Floating cities could reduce pressure on overcrowded land-based megacities. They could create new economic zones on the ocean. Some futurists even see floating cities as a solution to rising sea levels. Instead of retreating from the ocean, humanity might simply adapt and float above it. Freedom Ship could have been the first prototype of an entirely new civilization model. A world where cities are mobile, borderless, and constantly moving. But failure carries its own lessons. The Freedom Ship project slowly faded during the 2000s. No investors committed the massive capital required. Engineering questions remained unresolved. And without funding, construction never began. But the dream didn't disappear. In recent years, interest in floating cities has returned. Projects like Oceanic City and other floating architecture concepts are exploring similar ideas, though on a much smaller scale. Meanwhile, massive cruise ships are growing larger every year. Some already carry over 9,000 people. What once sounded impossible is gradually becoming more realistic. Freedom Ship may have failed, but it pushed the conversation forward. Today, the Freedom Ship exists only in architectural renderings and engineering proposals. A mile-long floating city that never left the drawing board. But the question it asks still lingers. As the planet grows more crowded, as climate change reshapes coastlines, as technology makes once impossible ideas achievable, will humanity eventually build cities that drift across the oceans? Or will projects like Freedom Ship remain beautiful dreams that were simply too big for their time? Because sometimes the most fascinating mega projects in history are the ones that almost happen.